Start again. I'm Mike Kelly from Project Healing Waters Omaha program, and this is session 1 of the beginning fly tying class. So we're going to start off covering a lot of basic tools, and then we'll tie the San Juan Worm. So the first tool that we're going to cover is the vices. So you should be able to see my vices now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the one on the upper left is a peak rotary vise. And can you see my mouse moving too?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure. So the pedestal is real heavy, and there's actually 3 different holes on this one to put the shaft into. But the pedestal is very heavy because a lot of times when you're tying flies, you're putting a lot of pressure on the thread. And if it's a cheaper vise or a cheaper pedestal, a lot of times it can kind of start to move the vise or flip it over. But the peak is pretty good at the weight of that base. That's what I actually use. So this handle on the side is to actually rotate the head. So while you have a hook in the vise,
Like
if you're using, once you get a hang of tying flies and stuff, you might want to actually rotate the hook to tie a material on. A lot of times I use it mainly to look at the other side of the fly or to just rotate it to show people or whatever. But this uses a cam system, so there's a split in the jaws right here, and you put the hook in that split, and then you move this cam lever, and that closes the jaws down onto the hook. This object off to the side is bobbin cradle, and if you're using rotary functions, you hang the bobbin on that little peg right there, and that lets you rotate the hook and not twist up the thread. This is a Renzetti vise in the middle, and it's basically a lot of the same features. It's basically the same vise. They're a lot more popular and they're a lot more expensive. I've never used one, but they say it's like a Cadillac. If you've ever driven one, you know the difference. And then on the far right here on the top is a Regal vise. I think that's what you have there.
Yep.
The difference with a Regal vise is you don't have to adjust the jaws at all. So it's tension loaded, spring loaded. So once you squeeze that handle, the jaws open, and when you let go, it holds whatever size hook you put in there. On these other 2 vices, you have to actually adjust that cam system in order to hold the hook securely. This is a Griffin vise, and again, a lot of the same basic features. This is a rotary vise. It has a bobbin cradle too, but this shows a clamp style mount, so it doesn't have the pedestal vise like these other ones do. You actually clamp it to the side of a table, or for a lot of years I used this little folding TV tray, they used to call them. I had a wooden TV tray, and I used to tie flies from that. Just clamp the vise to that. This is probably the cheap. It's definitely one of the cheapest, and it's like a Thompson style vise. Very basic. The bottom line is all that really does is hold the hook securely. So if you're spending $150 on a peak, or $200 on a Renzetti, I think it's about $200 on a Regal. I'm not sure the price of the Griffith. You can probably get a Thompson vise for about $25 to $50. And then on the lower right, there's some videos out there. This fly tyer, his name is Rim Chung. He invented a fly called the RS2. It's a very popular fly, especially in Colorado. And in a lot of his videos, he uses a hemostat to hold the hook. And he has some kind of a clamp that clamps to the table, and then he puts a hemostat to hold the hook in place. So that's really all you need.
A lot of the early tires didn't use anything except just a spool of thread in their fingers.
Right. Let me go to the other camera here. And so this is my peak vise, and wanted to show you a couple of other features here. So I've got a hook in there. I'll put a thicker hook in there. It's actually one of the hooks I'm going to use for the San Juan Worm. And as I'm moving the cam here, you can see that it's not wanting to close down on it because the jaws need to be adjusted. So I just take this knob and adjust it to where it holds it securely. And then when I close that, the hook won't move in the vise. I'll put this other hook back in there that I had because I had a couple of materials tied on there just to show you another feature that I have. This is a material clip. It's basically a spring, if you can see that. Let me zoom in a little better. It's a spring that I've got a couple of materials tied on there, and I can put those down in that spring, and it keeps them from getting in the way. So this wire let go, I'll just tie that on just to show you what I'm talking about. And then I can use that material clip to keep those out of the way.
That's invaluable. That little spring right there on the top of the Regal vise is the same thing.
So then, actually, let me put that same hook back in there. With my bobbin here, I pulled some length out on that thread, and I just hang it on that material clip. Can you see that off to the side?
It's,
And then if I want to rotate, say I want to wrap this material on there, I can rotate the vise. It wraps the material on there, but my thread doesn't keep wrapping around the hook.
show
That's
what
the
happens if
purpose
you
of
don't put it in the cradle, Mike.
If you don't, then of course the the thread gets either unwound or wound depending on the direction you're rotating, and it winds around the hook.
And it could
Now-
interfere with your materials too that you're trying to tie in.
Right. So that's about as much about the vise. I don't want to spend all night here. I'm going to switch cameras here and cover some of the basic tools that are used in fly tying. So let me switch cameras here. Okay, I'm going to move these things around. So the first thing we'll cover is the bobbin. So there's a lot of different styles of bobbins. This one here has a ceramic tube. And basically all it is a thing to hold the thread spool securely. And these are pretty standard with all different fly tying threads. These spools are all about the same size. So basically these are like a spring wire arms here, and you squeeze them together to tighten it like that. You can see that those little pegs are closer together, or you stretch them apart like that to make them looser. If you're breaking a lot of thread, especially with something, there's different thread sizes, but if you're breaking a lot of thread, you need to loosen these arms and make them a little bit looser. The looser, as long as it holds it securely in there, and you can always use your hand around the spool to adjust the tension. So this one has a ceramic tip in the end of it. I don't know if you can see that on this camera. But it has a ceramic tip in the end. And the reason is a lot of the bobbins, especially the earlier ones, just had a metal tube. And if you're using real heavy threads and putting a lot of pressure on it, you can actually wear a groove in that metal. So as you're rotating, it's covering all the sides of that opening of that circle there of the opening. And if you run across that groove, you can cut your thread. So here's another one that has a flared metal tip on the end of it. So to load a bobbin holder, this is a bobbin threader, and it's basically a little handle with a wire loop hanging out of it. And you just stick that in the end of the tube. You run your thread through there, and then you just pull it back through. So the next, that's the bobbins. For probably the next most important tool is scissors. So here's a few different kinds. All fly tying scissors are pretty much, they have a real sharp point. They're usually pretty fine at the tips. And you really use scissors a lot to cut all the materials. The problem with the materials are some of them are made out of metal, some of them are made out of plastic. There's different strengths, different types of hair, and you can really dull the points. So if you're ever cutting wire, you always want to use the back end of the scissors to cut wire, and save the tips, keep them really sharp for your hackle and fur and thread points and stuff like that. So this particular scissors, it's serrated. So there's some slippery materials like different types of hair that when you go to cut it, they'll just push out of the way when you close the scissors, especially if they're starting to get a little dull. So a serrated scissors will actually grab a hold of that hair and cut it a little easier. This one also, if you look in the center of it, if you can see that, it actually has a notch for cutting wire. This scissors right here is actually curved tips. So that's good for shaping like bass bugs, where it's a bunch of packed hair and you're trying to shape it into a curved shape. You can use the curved, but sometimes it's better to just get in there with at a certain angle and cut with those curved tips. The next item is a bodkin. It's a pretty simple tool, but basically all it is a needle with a handle on it. And this particular one has a hole in the end of it, and it's used as a half hitch tool. So you can use that over the eye of a hook. You can wrap the thread around that and pull it back over, and I can show you that on the fly. But it's basically a needle that's used for picking things out. You can use it for dabbing glue on the head of a fly. You always end up with some kind of a reason to, you can clear the glue out of an eye of the hook. I actually put a little bit of Velcro on this, so I use that to pick dubbing out and use it to rough up some flies and make them more buggy. Next tool is hackle pliers, and these aren't necessarily needed. If you're using shorter feathers, it's nice to be able to grab onto the tip of the feather with these pliers and hold on to it, and then wrap it, then try to get your fingers in there and tie it. And there's different styles.
Different, Mike, I don't know. Let me
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you what comes in our kit. There it is.
Is-
This one here.
Okay, so it's the rotary with the long handle. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are nice. I've actually never used those, but they do come in handy to so you don't have to wrap um, over the top of it. I'll show you that in some later flies where we're actually using hackle. This particular fly doesn't use it. And
Feel free to start.
that's about it with the main basic tools. There's a lot of other tools you can use in fly tying, but as we get to the other flies more advanced, I'll kind of get to that. So I'm going to talk about hooks for a little bit. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit here. So we have dry flies that obviously are meant to float on the surface. And normally a dry fly hook right there in the center is a fine wire hook. And the reason is you're putting materials on there and you want it to actually float on the surface of the water. If the hook is too heavy, it's going to pull it under. So a lot of your dry fly hooks are really fine wire. They usually have a little bit longer of a shank like that because most of the flies that we tie have kind of a long body section. This is a wet fly hook. Below it, it's a thicker wire, so it's going to sink a little better. It's a little bit shorter of a shank, and it has a little bit more curve to it. Usually nymphs are have more of a curved shape to them. This is a little bit longer of a nymph hook. And again, when you're tying a wet fly, a lot of wet flies are almost like say a drowned insect. They're a little bit shorter of a body. When you're tying the nymph part of an insect, and we'll get into the actual life cycle of the bugs and everything, I think in the next fly we're going to tie next session. But a nymph hook is usually a little heavier wire, again, like the wet fly hook, because nymphs are intended to sink, and a little bit of curve to it. And then this is a streamer hook, and that one's actually bent. I picked a bad one out of the box. You can see where the eye section is bent right there. But basically what I want to show is that it has a really long shank. This is actually a 4x long. So if you kind of, I don't want to get into the weeds with all the different sizes of hooks and everything, but it means that the shank is 4 times longer than what a normal standard dry fly hook would be at that same size. The shank is actually 4 times longer. So with streamers, you're imitating bait fish normally, and so you want a longer hook shank. What we're going to be using tonight is actually they call them scud hooks. In a finer wire, you could use them as an emerger, but it's a curved, heavy wire hook because we want it to sink. But the curve gives us a little bit wider of a gape, the gap of the hook, and it also gives us a shape that we want to have for the San Juan worm. So I'm going to, pardon me?
I don't believe we're set up with a scud hook.
And with the San Juan worm, I normally tie it on a scud hook. You can tie it on any hook.
Okay.
You're going to hear a lot of rules in fly fishing, but the bottom line is it depends on what you have and what you want to tie with. There's reasons for different things, and like you'll see with the San Juan I'm going to tie right now, you'll see why I use a scud hook, just for the shape of it. But a San Juan worm tied on a standard hook is going to work just as good because it's the actual shape of the fly itself. So I'm going to take some chenille, and so it comes on a card like this wrapped around. And if you'll notice where it makes that bend, and you've got it there, right? Is it wrapped around a, oh, I didn't switch cameras, sorry.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
So this is ultra chenille, it's called. There's different sizes of chenille. Here's a medium regular chenille, and it's real. It's not as dense as the ultra chenille. You can see it's like two-sided almost, like it's flat. This is used for wrapping bodies on flies. But this particular floss is very dense, or I'm sorry, chenille is very dense. You can see it's almost solid there, but it's made out of fibers wound around a core. And as it wraps around this card, you got these bends right there where it came around the card. The good thing about a San Juan worm on this size of a hook is you're going to use about a card length of chenille. So I'm going to cut it right at that bend, so I don't have to worry about that messing up the shape of my worm. So that's going to be my piece of material I'm going to tie on there. I'm going to set that off to the side. And the thread I'm going to use is, this is ultra thread. It's 140 denier. Now there's two, the two most popular sizes of thread are 140 denier and 70 denier. You'll also hear them called 6/0 and 8/0. This would be the equivalent of 6/0. But they're basically, this is a little heavier thread. 140 compared to 70, it's a little heavier thread. And a 6/0 thread is heavier than an 8/0 thread. So I'm going to basically start this thread on the hook. First of all, when you put the hook in the vise, you can see where the bend of the hook is right there.
Mm-hmm.
You want to grab the bend of the hook toward the lower end. And the reason is that gives it strength. If you were to tie it like this, that's not a good place on the hook to put all the pressure when you're pulling on it. And if you were to do it like this, it's going to get in the way of your tying. It's always best, most of the time, when you mount a hook to the vise, you want to grab that lower corner of the bend right there and make sure it's nice and tight. So when I start I'm just going to demonstrate this first, and then we'll go step by step for you guys to do it. So I'm going to start, I usually get in the habit of starting about 1 eye length back from the eye of the hook. Everybody can see what I'm doing there. About 1 eye length back. So if I hold the thread, I'm holding about maybe 2-3 inches in my hand. And I hold the thread across the hook like that. Make a wrap, maybe go forward a little bit, and then cross back over it. So now I'm wrapping over the thread I'm holding in my left hand. And if you notice, I'm holding this at about a 90-degree angle. That causes all those wraps to be touching turns. So it basically coats that whole hook with thread without any gaps in between. So I'm going to keep wrapping it down the hook shank until I get around the bend a little bit. And I'll show you a trick with these scud hooks on determining the right point. So I'm going to take this thread now, the tag that I had in my left hand, I'm just going to cut that off. So when you get it wrapped back to the back of the hook, if you hold this at the hook point, if that's at about a 45-degree angle, that's about as far down as you want to go. If you get too far down the hook, then you start to get into the place where the fish's teeth are going to be, where the lip is going to be, hopefully. And you don't want to interfere with that part of the hook. So I've got my thread wrapped back as far as I want it to be. I'm going to show you one more thing about thread. I'm going to just kind of do some loose wraps to get it to the middle so it hangs good. I'm going to try to zoom in here. Oops. If I take my thread and kind of rotate it counterclockwise as if I was looking down on it, it just spin it like that. It causes the thread to kind of flatten out. And that's a lot easier for covering the hook shank if you have a flatter thread. If your thread's real flat and it's starting to separate apart, you can spin it the other way. If you spin it clockwise as you're looking down on it, that'll tighten up that thread and it actually makes it stronger. So anyway, we'll get to that in some other flies too. So I'm going to take this chenille and using you always use the hook for measurements. It's a good way to keep your flies consistent. If I go to the eye of the hook with my fingers like this and hold that chenille out, that's the length of the whole hook right there. So I'm going to transfer that to my other fingers. And then that's the point where I'm going to take a wrap. Now, if you'll notice, I have that chenille on the side towards me. So when I put pressure on the thread, it pulls it on top of the hook.
Mike, can you stop for just a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me go over, come around behind you. Okay. What you want to do is pick up in your right hand. You'll have to, you're right-handed, right? Yep. Okay. Always have to check.
I still have to do my wrap around that.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Okay, so.
I'm going to do this step by step later on and stop on each step to let everybody
Oh, you
catch up.
are?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I'm sorry, Mike. I was out doing something else and didn't hear you. Press
No.
on, sir.
That's fine. Basically, I just wanted to kind of do a demonstration to show you guys how it's tied and then let you do it. We'll do one step at a time and let everybody catch up. And that way it'll kind of help reinforce the learning there. So what I want is for this chenille to be right on top of the hook. So again, when I first tied it on, I was on the side towards me. So when I wrap, the torque of the thread pulls it around onto the top. So right now, if you look, that chenille's on top of the hook. And I did about probably 4 turns there. You want about 4 or 5 turns at the back of the hook there. And just pull the rest of that chenille back. And we just want to, if your thread coverage is good, you can just kind of go quickly. Otherwise, try to do some touching turns and get it to about the middle of the hook, right about there. And we'll take that chenille and fold it forward again, pulling it towards me. And then I'll take a wrap and kind of pull it tight and get that right on top. And make sure that's 5 turns. And then I'll do touching turns back to the right behind the eye, see where I started my thread. And then again, I'll make, so I took a couple of turns and then I can just kind of look at it, adjust it if I have to. And then 3 more good turns. And then I'll move it in front. Now with that kind of sticking up like that, if you have a half hitch tool instead of a whip finish tool, take your thread and wrap it around I don't know if I'm zoomed out enough to do that. Let me zoom
Yeah,
out
that's
a little
good.
bit. So I'll take my half hitch tool, has a hole in the end of it, and I'll wrap around the tool and then hold that up to the eye. This actually is too small for this, but I'll try it again. Hold it up to the eye and then pull the thread over. That's a half hitch that's going to hold everything tight. And then if you do it 2 wraps, that's like what a whip finish does. And then do 2 more wraps. And that pulls it tight. If you have a whip finish tool, right here, it's this tool right here. You lay the tool against the thread and then wrap it around to where you're making a cross there. And then just make a few wraps like that. Once you're done,
Learn how to use that tool.
you can clip the thread. And then I like to take a little, if you have head cement, I like to use a little bit of head cement on all that thread because a trout has sharp teeth. They're not very long, but they're sharp. And they can cut the thread. So I'll put a little bit of head cement along that thread part right there.
And you can get Hanson's hard as nails down at the Walmart.
You can use super glue if you want. You can use Sally Hansen hard as nails, the cheapest fly cement you can get, and it works really good. So the next step, and I'm going to have to move my laptop here because I forgot to get my lighter out. There we go. All right. So just very carefully, I'm going to take a lighter, just a standard Bic lighter, and just. Oh, see, I actually caught that on fire. All right. And then do that to the other end. And that just tapers the end and makes it kind of look more realistic or lifelike. And that's a San Juan worm.
Mike, can you zoom out and show where you laid all your tools?
Show what?
Where you put all your tools, how they're arranged on your bench?
Right now, since I did that demonstration, there's a big pile of them right there.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to show.
But I also have a kind of a little turntable thing with all kinds of hooks and lights and glues and threads and that kind of stuff.
Mike's table is extraordinarily well organized.
I have a roll top desk, and I've managed to get all my stuff organized in the roll top desk. So
yeah, I use a desk downstairs, and I will guarantee you I'll get halfway through a fly and I'll need a tool, and I put it someplace and I can't find it. I had just finished using it on the previous fly, and now I'm ready for the next fly I'm tying, and I can't find the darn thing, and I'll spend 10 minutes looking for it. So the point I wanted to try and make was, you'll notice that the only thing on the top of his desk are his tools. And that's important.
That's the way I like to keep it, is just the tools I need. Like the ones I'm actually tying with are here on my piece of paper. And, that's the only thing on my desk. I have all these other little drawers that have, hairs and furs and different things in them. But when it comes to the desk, I like to just keep it all cleaned off. And so that's the San Juan worm. Is there any questions at this point, or do we want to go ahead and get into the step by step?
Ready to tie?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Big thumbs up, Mike.
Good deal. So I'm going to stick my hook back in the vise. So when you do that, everybody has their hook mounted. If you're using a standard hook, you just want that to be parallel so your thread doesn't want to roll off the end of it. And as soon as you have your hooks mounted in the vise, let me know.
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay. So are we zoom good focus there?
Yeah, that was real good.
Yep.
Mike.
All right. So again, to start the thread, I'm going to pull off about 3 inches off the end of the tube there. And some people like to actually wrap it around a finger like that, just to hold it tight. Thread is one of the cheapest things you'll use in fly tying. So actually use my reading glasses for this one. All right. So I'm going to hold my thread tight against the hook like this and go about it doesn't really matter on this particular fly, but it's a real good habit to get into. And that's what I'm trying to teach you is like basic tips to help your fly tying. So if you start at the eye of the hook, it's probably not a big problem on this particular fly.
Mhm.
But if you can get it to work where you start an eye length back like this,
Bring your hand. Okay. Pull it.
and then wrap back over it toward the back,
Here, no, that's tight.
I'll stop at that point.
There you go. Now wrap toward the back of the hook. There, keep the tension then on the thread. Well, let's tension come off the thread. It broke? Yeah, okay.
Okay, if your thread broke, I would recommend maybe trying to spread the jaws on the bobbin holder a little bit, and then it won't pull so tight on the thread.
Just a second, Mike, I gotta reload a bobbin here.
Okay,
This thread is not good. Here, do this. Yep, let's try that one. Let's see what we got here. Okay, what thread are you using? 6/0?
I'm using 6/0, 140 denier.
Okay, yeah, that's better right there.
I just worked that all the way to the back.
All the way to the back, you know, a little trick. Bring this up and put that up here, and about, yeah, just like that. Now, see, that'll force the thread to come down the,
Okay, right, feet down.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then forces it to see how it tracks now.
Yeah,
Nice and
Yeah.
even back. See,
So I
Mike's-
hold it about
yeah,
90 degrees, away from the shank of the hook. And then as you wrap against that, if you hold it tight, as you wrap against that, it makes all those wraps get close together. If you have a few gaps, that's okay, because you're going to wrap back up when you tie on the material.
There we go. Bring this a little closer for you. Yeah. So what I do is wrap so that your thread is touching this as it comes in. That way it gets forced right up next to the.
I'll tell you what,
Nice and tight.
since you guys are using a regular hook, I'm going to switch to a regular hook here.
That'd be helpful.
That's a little bit too
Yeah.
far. So just unwrap it.
Okay.
It'll just take me a second to catch up to you guys.
Let it hang.
So you guys passed me up. I got to catch up to you now.
You're not that far.
Okay, we're
No,
gonna
they're-
unwrap it again, about 1 or 2 more times.
They're
So that's
close.
All right, so I'm starting my thread.
Right there. See where
And
that
I'm
is?
gonna-
It's right on the barb of the hook.
The barbs, that's a good measure.
All right, so like John said, when you get close to the point, you're going to have to angle out like that and start angling your wraps. Otherwise, if you nick your thread with the point of the hook,
Snap.
a lot of times you'll end up with a break. So that could have been why you broke your hook earlier.
Yeah.
Go down
So if
like-
your hook shank is level when it's in the vise, mine's actually tipped up a little bit, but not too bad. When you let your thread hang, that's how you measure it. When you let your thread hang and it's at the barb of the hook, that's the end of the shank.
There you go.
So you've got, this is the shank right here. This is the gap of the hook.
Yeah, see how the.
And then the eye of the hook is right here. And I've gone about an eye back is where I started it from. And again, that's just, for this particular fly, it's not going to ruin the fly if you don't do that. But I do that to keep myself honest when I'm tying more difficult flies.
You'll hear
so again,
people
with
talk
the,
about crowding the eye.
Pardon me?
That means is you're tying too close to the eye.
They're talking about crowding the eye.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's what Mike is showing you here. If you always go back 1 or 2 eye wisps before you start tying, that will keep you from crowding the eye. Nothing worse than getting out on the water and trying to put a piece of 6/0 tippet through a fly's eye when you've got thread all over it.
You can see on that, I've got a little bit of a curl right there. I'm a perfectionist. I'll just snip that off. So I want to go, if you just kind of center it on there, I think I really just want to go about a hook shank in length, about like that. And then this is a good way to measure your materials. A lot of flies use measurements like a hook shank in length for the tail, a hook shank in length for the wing. If you hold it up to the shank like this,
Just like that. See how I do it? Measure it. and just
with your
grab
fingertips, and then use your other fingertips to mark that spot. When you move it back, you can
That's
wrap
it.
it right on.
it. Good.
Now I got that there.
Huh?
I'm gonna just go back and.
Rotate the chenille a little bit so that it's on this side of the hook. There, like that, right there. Okay. There you go.
And then
Bring that chenille over so that's on
one,
the near side of the hook.
Do about 5 or 6 wraps.
There you go.
3, 4,
Let me know when everybody's caught up to me.
Now,
5.
when you get about 2 wraps on it, then you can go ahead and put some torque on it, and you can pull down, put a little tension on the thread, not too much.
We got 5 on there.
Hold on to that good tight, put some tension on the thread now.
And then you can always reach up there and just kind of tweak it a little bit and make sure it's
Put another
right on top of the hook.
There you go. Try and wrap, you can take your hands off now, it should be on there, and I'll wrap one wrap right on top of the other.
Like
Yeah, the wraps need to be right on top of each other. See how Mike's got it up there? This is where your magnifiers come in handy. So about
Yeah.
5 wraps.
You know, there's no specific laws. It could be 6 wraps, it could be 3 wraps, but
Yep.
to me, it's nice and secure. I want to make sure this fly doesn't fall apart. So I'll do 5 wraps.
When you hear a lot of people talk about every wrap is important. And it is, especially when you get into some of the other flies with a lot of material. You want to keep the bulk of your thread down, so the number of wraps you put on it gets to be important. So like
Yep.
Mike is saying, we've been tying for so long that we just know how many wraps it takes. But as a beginning tyer, 5 wraps for a San Juan Worm for the wraps is a pretty good place to start. That's just about enough to give you security, plus not get too much thread overlap and too much thread wrap on it, okay?
You don't want a big bump there, but if you only put a couple wraps on there and a fish pulls on it, or you get it snagged on something, it's just probably going to break that. So if you feel more comfortable with 6 wraps, you can do 6 or 7, you know. Then fold it back and wrap it to about the middle of the shank. And if you have any spaces in your wraps there where the hook's showing through, you can cover them up at that point. Just kind of go to the midpoint between what you've got left and the front of the fly there.
Right
So
about midway. Where do you think is mid?
be about
Yep, so go ahead and wrap it all the way to where you think the midpoint is. It really isn't that important. I mean, you don't have to get a micrometer out.
right.
Looks pretty good. Yeah.
See where mine is? It's about halfway between where I fold that back and where I started my thread.
The key word there is about.
About.
guesstimate.
This is a San Juan worm, not a salmon fly. So
Like we know the difference, Mike. Come on.
right. So I'm taking this chenille now, moving it toward me a little bit. So when I take that wrap, it's going to kind of pull it right on top with that first wrap. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do a 5th one.
Good. Good.
Then we'll fold that chenille back.
All right.
See how it rotated down?
Yeah.
What you can do now, you can bring that back over. Okay. This one here, there.
Okay, and then pull it back
And bring your thread forward.
forward. And that's,
Just wrap it, no, wrap it forward.
okay.
There you go. Two, you wrap it to about one eye width back behind. You go a little bit further. That's about 2 eyes.
Yeah, I'm a little bit far back too. I think I might go a little bit farther.
Here, right about there. There's about
Forward.
1 eye. And let me show you what we mean by an eye width.
It's this right here.
Yeah, if I take that guy right there and I measure it.
See, I'm doing it with my scissors.
What we're talking about. Okay.
See how I'm measuring it with my scissors?
See that?
So that right there, the bent down eye like that. You know, just kind of consider that an eye length. And again, this is not absolute. This isn't a fly where there's a lot of materials tied at the head. So you're not going to really have a problem, but it's a good practice to get into. And that's what this first fly was intended to show you a lot of techniques. So if your thread is forward like that, then you can take your chenille, move it on the side towards you, and give it a good couple wraps, and then adjust it if you need to.
They want a couple extra. I'm just kind of whipping them out.
See, you haven't tried to time it.
I did. I broke it 3 times.
Yeah, that's where we were stuck. Sorry.
And you know what it was for. But
This is for tying a San Juan Worm.
I gotta do everything again.
Okay, now, hold this back like this, and now tie around. Just like that, 4 or 5 times. Okay. There you go. You have the half hitch tool. Use the half hitch tool. On top, move the top, there you go. The eye of the hook, and just slide it off. Do that about 4 or 5 times.
So what am I doing here?
Okay. Change the bottom, there you go. Oops.
You want to do a few half hitches if you're using a half hitch tool, but do a couple of these where you wrap it around twice,
So I still need to do that. 1, 2.
wrap it around twice, and then pull that over.
That's good, yeah, okay, yeah, and just keep it out of your way. Okay.
And then pull your thread tight.
Thread,
Okay,
on top of the thread,
okay,
down about here,
out here.
and wrap around it,
1,
just once,
okay.
and then, oops. Oh, there you go.
1.
Now bring it to the top, there you go, just slide it up. Okay, do that 2 more times. Top, on the top, there we go. Oops.
1. Oh, 1.
Yeah,
I got it. I got it. There we
you
go.
go.
One more
one
time.
more time.
Just gotta build that muscle memory.
There you go, that's exactly right.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, clip your thread, cut your thread off. You know, a word of caution, at this point, a lot of times what will happen is you'll cut the wrong thread. And it'll all come unraveled, so really pay attention to what you're cutting.
And
Then you want to, go ahead, Mike.
a key with that is if you have a little tag, a little bit of thread hanging off of there, people try to get too close with their fine point scissors and get in there. And if you cut it, and your head starts unraveling, you started at one point and kept wrapping, and then you tried to tie it off. If you didn't tie it off good enough and you cut that head, your fly is going to unravel and you got to start over. So just if you have a little bit of thread hanging off of there, just don't be too concerned about it. The fish isn't going to care.
Nope,
Um,
trust me, you will cut the thread before you're ready to at some time during this class. And when you do, we'll show you how to correct it. So you don't have to retie the whole fly.
I've been tying more than 35 years and I still break my thread. I still cut the thread at the wrong time. I still overdress flies, put too much material on them. You know, you get, especially when you're trying to get creative, you get carried away.
Everybody's different.
I've been tying for about 40 years and I can say exactly the same thing. In fact, I was tying some today and I crowded the head. I cut the thread when I didn't intend to, so yeah. Yeah, well, for me anyway, what happens is you get so used to tying, you get into a routine. I usually tie at least 12 flies in a sitting, the same kind. And on about the 10th or 11th fly, you get to the point where it just gets to be routine. And that's when you make mistakes, so. Okay, cut off the excess. You want that head to be about the same length as the tail.
Well, probably about.
But if it's not, if you put a worm on a hook, you don't necessarily measure it when you put it on there, right? So
And we don't have lighters here today, so we can't singe the,
with this type of chenille, I don't think it's critical that it's going to come unraveled.
Yeah.
But you know, it just kind of gives it that pointy look to make it look more like a worm. But this will catch fish. This is the thing that serious trout fishermen keep in a little film canister in the back of their fly vest, and they only get it out when people aren't watching. They don't keep it in their fly box, so they show somebody that they have a San Juan worm, but they definitely catch fish. And if you're used to using worms for like bluegill and stuff like that, you don't have to change them. You got the same one on there. I'd probably recommend head cement. Like I said, whether it's super glue or like John was saying, that Sally Hansen's nail polish. I have a little applicator bottle here that has a long tube on it.
can you show them that bottle, Mike?
Yeah, I'll show you. I just put it on all on that underside of the hook there where the thread's wrapped. But I just filled that up with the Sally Hansen's, and then it's got a, usually it gets gummed up here toward the top. You just kind of scrape that off with your fingernail. But it has a little wire thing that sticks down in there. If you push it all the way through, that actually comes through the end. So it keeps the tube clear.
That little guy that he just stuck down in there is critical. I have a lot of bottles like that without the little thing on top, and I'm constantly having to clean it out on the inside. So you can buy those on Amazon.
They're pretty cheap. I think you can get them at Cabela's now.
Yeah, I think so. They're about $1.50 a piece, I think. That sounds familiar?
Cabela's, it's probably more than that.
Yeah. If you get them on Amazon, you know, they don't call them, I forget what they call it. It's called applicator bottles.
Maybe applicator bottle, yeah. A lot of the big name fly dudes use those. When the Sally Hansen starts getting thick, pour it out and put some fresh in there.
Yep.
You can buy that stuff for a couple bucks.
Yeah.
And if you let it get too thick and it starts getting gummy, do yourself a favor and don't try to use isopropyl alcohol to thin it. It gels it up, and I had a mess.
Makes a mess. Just get rid of it. I mean, Sally Hansen's is cheap. You can buy a gallon of it for $10. You know, so buy the smallest bottle you can, because you probably, unless you're a real commercial fly tyer, you probably won't use a bottle of Sally Hansen's before it gets too gummy to use. So
with that chenille, the ultra chenille, there's a micro chenille, they call it. And you can see with that black how it's narrower, a lot narrower than what that is. You can use that for smaller flies if you want to try to do some smaller in red.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Or other colors. But a lot of the techniques, this is a simple fly, but a lot of the techniques that you learned here are going to really help you with the next flies that are coming. So
every fly you tie will start exactly the same way. You'll put the thread on the hook exactly the same way. Every fly you tie, the material will be attached to the hook in exactly the same way that we learned tonight. So what Mike taught you tonight is going to be used again and again and again and again. And by the time you get done, it'll just be second nature. And you'll wonder, why did I have so much trouble with that the first time I tried it? So I would recommend, if you think this is something you might enjoy, please join us again next month. Third Thursday, we're going to be here at 6 o'clock again. But if you think
Second Thursday or first?
third Thursday, right, Mike?
Third Thursday.
so the first Thursday of the month is just, we're tying flies.
Yeah.
Just, they're probably more advanced flies and everything. Let me change the camera so I'm not looking sideways at you here.
Got any printer paper in here?
Back here a minute.
So the first Thursday of the month is just fly tying, and sometimes we'll have special guests. We have some pretty big name fly tyers that help us out.
So the
And then,
next one would be December 15th.
So December 1st, I'll be tying a Royal Coachman because it's kind of Christmas colors. December 1st is the first Thursday, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be tying a Royal Coachman wet fly. It's pretty advanced, but it's a Christmas colors and everything. So doing December, we're doing Christmas colors. But so December, whatever the third Thursday is. What's the next fly, John?
Well, we were talking about doing a Christmas mini muddler, right?
No, the
Woolly bugger,
woolly bugger.
Christmas woolly bugger.
That's another fly that everybody uses. It's at everybody's box.
Yep.
It works for freshwater fish, bass, bluegill, crappie. But trout fishermen love them. It's a guide fly. It's easy to tie, relatively easy to tie, and they work everywhere.
That's okay. Give me your email.
So that's going to be the next fly, and it's going to teach some different techniques, teach about hackle a little bit, and we'll use chenille, but a little bit different chenille, like that brown that I showed you.
December
And-
15th, Mike.
15th.
Thursday, yeah. December
Okay.
15th.
That'll be the next class then. Session 2 will be the woolly bugger.
Muddler?
John's going to give you some Christmas colors, but it's basically the same fly,
40
I know.
regardless of the colors.
March in the Thanksgiving Day parade all the time.
Yeah, I love to joke around.
Okay, yeah, once I get your email address, I publish every month a Omaha Project Healing Waters newsletter. And I have been working for about 2 months now on a format for it. I think we finally settled on a format that we kind of like.